G'day and welcome to this podcast episode. It's really great to be in your earbuds again. I feel like I haven't had much time with you guys on the podcast here as we've had Alicia and Christine doing a bunch of episodes. But I have been lucky enough today to get to interview a really amazing decluttering coach. Her name is Lauren Winzar. She's someone we had at one of our recent intensives with our core clients in our six-figure business mastery program. And she brought some really great wisdom to the group about how to declutter not just our physical environment, but also our minds and the kind of link that might be there between what we see in our space around us and the way that we are internally processing what's going on in our life. And it turns out in this discussion, she's also got a little bit of parenting coaching going on there as well to be able to help us with our relationships with kids and other people that we live with. So look, I know Lauren has some really great stories to share. She's got a lot of wisdom around decluttering. And really, her whole thing is that she doesn't believe that you're just automatically born organized and getting everything right, but she's got some really specific strategies that can help us to be able to lower the clutter, lower the overwhelm in our mind and in our physical space, and be able to get even better results from what we're doing with our lives and our businesses. So listen in for this interview with Lauren. I hope you really enjoy it. Hey, it's fantastic to have you on the podcast today, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming to be our guest. And I want to just mention to everyone, we met, must be a few weeks ago now, not that long ago, when you came to speak at our intensive for our six-figure clients. And it was a really great discussion. I know the people in that group got a whole lot out of it. And we thought, hey, if you're open to doing a podcast interview, it might be really interesting to hear some of what you're doing for everyone as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You can't shut me up about this stuff, so anytime.
Yeah, which is great. And I guess just for people who don't know, decluttering, you call yourself a decluttering coach, and you're working with a lot of people all over the place. Tell us a bit about what that actually means. What do you do with people?
So for me, decluttering isn't just about the physical stuff. Like often when we hear decluttering, we think, oh, we're going to revamp our wardrobe, we're going to throw out some old books, that kind of thing. For me, it's a lot more than that. I got into decluttering, I suppose, kind of as a way to help myself with some mental issues I was having. I've always had the depression and anxiety, and mental health has always played a big part in my life. And figuring out that I wasn't ready to deal with what was going on in my head, but I could deal with what was happening in my physical space. And I noticed that as I was tidying, organizing, and then eventually when I realized that decluttering was the key there, I noticed that clearing that physical space actually cleared space in my mind. And the patterns I was noticing in my decision making in my physical space, I was then able to apply those same strategies to my mental clutter. And that was the game changer. So for me, decluttering our physical surroundings teaches us who we are. It teaches us how we make decisions, and it gives us space to make those decisions a little more easily.
What an incredible insight into how our brains and our environment are connected. Like, that's really
So
cool.
much. Yeah.
When you're working with people, like, who are your normal clients? Are we talking just like everyday people cleaning up the kitchens and stuff? Or is it people who are going through more, I don't know, deeper emotional issues? Like, what does it look like as an average?
Yeah, so it's a really fascinating concept because I don't really have a standard client. I try to speak to my clients, but I have everyone from people who are struggling so much that I can't get through their front door, like their physical environment is
Right.
proper hoarder, like that they may even be diagnosable hoarders, all the way through to people who apologize for the mess. And when I get there, I look around and think, this place looks like a display home. My house isn't that tidy. And though both sides, it's two sides of the same coin, and both sides do struggle with emotional clutter as well. I'm very careful to point out I'm not a psychologist or a counselor or anything like that. I simply use the tools of decluttering and know that they help in those other ways as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have clients that I see in person and we work side by side through their physical clutter. I have other clients that I see on Zoom all over the world, and we might work through both. So they'll tell me about why they're having trouble with a particular area in their home, and I can walk them through the decision-making process. And then there are other people that, we might be decluttering their to-do list or their calendar. And each step we're reflecting on why it is that you feel like this needed to stay in the first place. How did it come into being? And are you ready to let it go?
That's actually really cool. And like if someone goes through that process with you and it is more of that internal clutter that they're working on, what's the outcome of that? Like, given that, yeah, you're not sort of saying, oh, I'm a professional psychologist, I'm doing all that kind of like really, I don't know, professional work that those guys are great at.
Yeah.
What sort of really good stories do you have of people going through the decluttering process internally?
So most often it's more of a sense of self-awareness. When we're so busy as, especially small business owners like most of your listeners are, we're so busy, it can be hard to actually stop and listen to what's going on in our heads. So when we make the time to sit with someone or work side by side with someone and ask ourselves these questions, we're more conscious of our decisions, right? And it's that consciousness that changes things. You might be doing something just because it's routine. You might be keeping something just because, it made sense to keep it once, but it doesn't actually make sense anymore. You just haven't reviewed that idea in a really long time. So that sense of self-awareness can really shift a lot of things. And I have had clients that actually one of my very, very early clients hired me to help her tidy up her house so that when she listed it to sell, she didn't have so much to deal with. When she moved, she would be fine. When the real estate agent came through, they could see what they were looking at. Like, she had a lot to clear. And we did a massive sort of binge decluttering session. We went through hard and fast. We cleared the whole house in 2 days, like not empty, but like back to, this looks like a family lives here and loves it, right? And she had gone through, and I didn't realize this when I first started working with her, but she had gone through a horrible breakup. She wanted to sell the house because it felt haunted from her past life, which a lot of people can identify with. By the time we finished, she loved her house so much, she called the agent and said, no, I'm not selling anymore. Like, she literally took back her life and loved her home again. And she was ready to just throw it all out, like throw the house away and start afresh. She got that fresh start without having to sell.
That's pretty amazing. I love
it. Was so cool.
Like, I guess in massage world, in bodywork world, we have this really fundamental understanding of how body and mind are connected, and often the challenges we might have in mindset or patterns, like you're talking about, of behavior, can show themselves or manifest themselves in some kind of physical condition. It's just one of the things massage therapists deal with. But it's almost like I'm hearing the same kind of thing, but in the physical world around us, not just our body, but our actual space. If we're cluttered in our head, it can be manifested, if you want to use that word, or seen out in the world.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. And I have seen it in physical, like in our bodies as well. I definitely don't have the experience that you guys have, but I know for myself that understanding how I deal with my environment and then understanding how I deal with my emotions definitely changed how I deal with my physical body. And I am much more aware of when something is going well or something isn't sitting right within my physical being than I used to be. And I know that when something slips, whether it's my emotions, whether it's my environment, relationships, work, whatever, if something slips, I start to feel it in my body. And I'm so much more aware of that now. But you can, if you take the time to stop and step back, you can see that flow and you can see that all of these things started to crumble at the same time. And so you can pick them back up in that same way.
Isn't that interesting? And I wonder then, like, a question I might have is it a flow that only goes one way? Like, I can imagine it's sort of going both ways. If I was suddenly picked up and put into a house that was very cluttered, or an environment that was uncomfortable for me because of the amount of clutter or something, it might cause an internal challenge, but then that's almost like the opposite of what you're kind of talking about, where the internal creates external. Have you, I mean, we're getting pretty off the deep end here, Lauren.
But I told you can't shut me up about this, James. I warned you.
So do you see a relationship there? How do they work?
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely goes both ways. So I have seen, like I said, I've seen when we start to manage our physical environment better, we start to become more aware of our mental
Mm,
struggles and can deal with that better as well. But at the same time, if something happens, and there's so many things that can interfere. Like we can't control everything, unfortunately. But you know, if something's going on, maybe you have hormonal changes, maybe chemicals in your brain have started misfiring, maybe external things like the people around you or your work or something has changed, and that's going to impact one of those things, your body, your mind, or your physical space.
mm.
That is going to have a negative impact all around if we don't catch it in time. And like I see this myself, you know, in myself. I hear a lot of people say, you know, that, oh, my place would be tidy if I didn't have kids or if my husband wasn't such a slob. No, I promise you, that's not the problem. You know, I promise you that's not the problem. Those things are factors for sure. You know, if your husband's a mess and your kids can't keep their stuff under control, yes, that's going to impact your environment. And you can't possibly keep on top of everyone else's stuff, but you can still deal with your own. You can still have an impact, a positive impact on yourself, which will have a positive impact on your body, your mind, and your physical space. And in the same way that others might negatively impact you, you can have that positive impact going outwards as well. And that, of course, does work both ways too. Sometimes I know if I am off balance in one of those areas, it is going to have a negative impact on the people around me. So yeah, none of us are an island. You know,
Yeah.
everything goes back both ways.
It also makes me think a little bit about for health professionals like massage therapists,
Mm,
uh, different people set up their environments quite differently. Like,
mm,
especially in massage, there's quite a range of different styles of massage. Some are very clinical and sort of
yep.
medical, and some are quite
Yes.
esoteric or quite touchy
Mm,
feely, you know, like they're down
mm,
a different end of the spectrum. And so
sure.
when you walk into a space where massage is happening or any of that kind of body work, you can often kind of pick up just from the way it looks and feels what type of therapist you're working with. And
Yeah.
so I can kind of picture that if it was cluttered, that would
Mhm.
also create a certain type of dynamic in that workspace. Like
Yeah.
a client coming in
Mm,
would definitely have a different experience of maybe a healing kind of art or of a treatment
mm,
if the space looks a certain way versus looking more cluttered or more overwhelming.
yeah.
Is that something
Yeah.
you see like in workspaces?
I do. I see it again because of that impact it has on how we think and feel. We're not everyone is aware that that's the problem. Like some people can go into a cluttered space or even their own home and not actually realize that it's a problem. Um, they might just think, you know, my house looks like that, or this is how it's always been, and they just can't imagine it being a different way. But they don't realize that that is impacting them. Like it's not always a conscious thing, and that's what I'm trying to make us aware of is being conscious of that impact that it's having. So in a space that is cluttered, like if we're talking about a massage therapist room, even if the client doesn't immediately go, wow, this is I can't relax in this space, like they're probably not going to say anything, it is going to impact how you work.
Mm.
So I get the impression, James, that you would be aware of it if your office space or your practice room was messy. But if you weren't aware of it, you're still going to be distracted by things. You're going to have a hard time focusing on that client. Something might catch your eye. Aside from like the workplace health and safety issues of, you know, things falling on top of each other and or on you or tripping over things, it is anything that is visually distracting is going to have an impact because our brains actually process so much more information than we're aware of. It doesn't always tell us when something's in the way. And that's a big thing when it comes to clutter. Like you look around, I don't know, are you sitting in your normal office space right now, James?
Yeah, one of
Yeah,
them.
okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, fair enough. So, the things in that room, like the things that are right in front of you on your desk and that kind of stuff, you see them every day,
Mm.
right? You see them so often that your brain has stopped telling you that they're there. Like if I said, where is X, you can probably tell me, but you don't get alerted to it
Mm.
because it hasn't moved. You have to consciously think about it to recognize it, because our brain is so busy that it doesn't have the power. It doesn't have, or sorry, it doesn't want to keep reminding you. You see something, and there are actually stats and numbers on this, but I can't remember those off the top of my head. That's like when something new and novel pops up, our brain goes, oh, look at that. But if it's happened 3 or 4 times, it's like, oh, I told her that before and she didn't do anything about it, so I guess it's not important. We brush it aside. So in the same way that you can drive home and forget how you got there, like you just on autopilot, that happens in our space. You stop noticing. I actually just posted on my social media just before this call. There were a few things on my kitchen bench that I'd stopped noticing. So I did a really quick tidy up, and I stopped halfway through thinking I was done, and then realized there was a half a lemon that had dried out, and somebody in my family had put it somewhere I wouldn't. And I hadn't noticed it. Like, I noticed it when it happened and then not since. And I went, why is that there? I have no idea how that got there. I know it's been there a while, and I just stopped seeing it. So even in my effort to tidy something up, I missed some things that absolutely didn't belong. So our brains are fascinating. I'm never going to stop being fascinated by our brains, but that is entirely what I do, is trying to figure out for each individual client how they can understand their way of thinking, and therefore how to, for lack of a better word, hack their normal processes so that they can be more productive and tidier and have more space for the things that matter to them.
I love that idea. It's actually reminds me a lot of what we do in business training. It's like each person has their own kind of way of behaving or way of getting things done. And it's not so much like saying this rule is going to work for everyone, you must all follow it. It's more about saying, okay, there's a few different types of behavior going on here. What's going to work best for you to actually take advantage of your strengths and create an outcome? And it does remind me, in our house, Leash will call herself like a messy cleaner. She makes a fair bit of mess when she's doing stuff, but then afterwards she always cleans and it looks really good afterwards, right? Whereas my behavioral trait, I tend to be a little bit the opposite. Like I don't make much mess because I don't want to have to clean up. I'm like, even when we're cooking, I'll like put things away as I'm going, and I'll sort of tidy up and put the scraps over here and do all that kind of as I go. Yeah. And then at the end, everything's sort of already mostly neat. And it's just different behaviors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if someone is having trouble like noticing their behavior, or they're just looking around right now and going, oh, heck yeah, maybe I could do with a bit of decluttering. Like what are the quick wins that work that might be easy for anyone to access?
Okay. My favorite place to start is to look at your bedside table. And I mean, if we're specifically talking about business, maybe look at your desktop, but same really. I'm going for a place that the main person impacted is yourself. All right. Because then we have fewer obstacles, like that's not mine, I don't get to have a say, or this is somebody else's fault, right? Looking for that place where the main person impacted is you, and ideally a space that should be more nourishing. So I usually say bedside table because it's the first thing you see in the morning. It's the last thing you see at nighttime. It should be a space of rest and rejuvenation. It should be set up just for you. Nobody's bedside table should look like somebody else's, because we need different things and we love different things, and different things rejuvenate us. But the same method or the same idea can be applied to your desk, because unless you're in a situation where you have a shared desk space, that space really only affects you, right? So the things that should have a permanent home on your desk are only the things that you use really, really often. And I mean like every day, not like, the stapler that, given we hardly print anything anymore, the stapler you might use once every 3 weeks, 6 months, whatever. That doesn't need to have a place on your desk just because it's considered desk stationery. Have a think about what your ideal desk looks like, your dream. And this is the process I use for everything, your dream. Visualize your perfect desk. Then, one item at a time, pick it up and decide if it fits in with that dream. Like, you can literally start with anything. So for me, in front of me right now, I have a glasses case. This does have a permanent spot on my desk because I only use these glasses at this desk. And if they're not on my face, they're in the case or I'll lose them. So things like that, just go through. That's your curation. Pick one thing at a time and does it fit this dream? If not, it needs to live somewhere else. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. It's actually making me look around at my desk right now.
I can see you doing that. You're like, well, how long's that been there?
My desk is pretty stark in this room, to be honest. This is our podcast recording room. So I spend probably half of my time, it's not just podcasts, but I spend probably half my time at this desk. And the other one, I share the office with Alicia. So if we've got to do calls and things, it's a bit hard in the same space. So it's kind of like I do have two spots, but this one is a little bit, I'd say, undercared for. Looking around, it doesn't look too messy, but it doesn't look particularly nourishing either. Was that the word you used, or nurturing?
Yeah, either one.
It's
either
pretty
or,
stark. Yeah. What about, like, I know on my desk downstairs where I spend a bit more of my time,
sure.
Some of the stuff on my desk are little things that people have given me that might have a bit of a, I say sentimental value. I don't mean like deeply meaningful. I just mean like a gift that someone's given me or something that someone came back from a holiday and gave me.
Yeah.
What do you do with that kind of stuff? Like, if I just look at it and go, does this serve a purpose for me at my desk right now? The answer is no. But do you have any tips for how to let go of items or tasks that feel emotionally significant?
Yeah. So firstly, you want to question, how is it actually impacting your emotions? Like, are you keeping it because you feel obligated to? Are you keeping it out of guilt or something? And okay, I love that I'm speaking to massage therapists here because you'll feel it in your body, right? Marie Kondo talks about having a spark of joy. Call it what you like. If you pick something up and you go, ugh, and you feel a bit deflated and you feel just generally yuck. And I have seen this in clients. Like, I've seen them pick something up and they're like, no, I have to keep this. And their body language tells me this is not a thing that they need in their life. All right. If you're getting that kind of dragging feeling about it, get rid of it. It's not enriching you in any way. It's not making you feel good. I mean, if you feel like somebody is going to be upset by you getting rid of it, that's a different discussion. And the short version is that's on them, not on you. But you can keep things just because you love them. They don't always have to serve a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is it makes me smile. For example, right in front of me, right in front of my computer, there's this little glass paperweight apple.
Love it.
Yeah, it's really old. A lot of people would walk right past it, but it belonged to my grandmother and it makes me think of her and smile every time I see it.
Oh,
now, I'm not going to keep every single thing I've ever seen that makes me think of my grandmother and smile. I would have a very, very full house. But the occasional little knickknack that speaks to you, that makes you smile when you see it, when you hold it, there's definitely an argument for keeping that. Whether it belongs on your desk or not, that is entirely up to you. That is this what my desk is supposed to look like? You might be able to see the bookcase behind me is, I've got all sorts of knickknacks in there. I'm all for keeping things just because you love them, but the bottom line is you must decide. Don't just keep it by default. Decide.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, I'm thinking of Alicia myself. We're quite different in the way we do that. But Alicia is, I mean, you know Alicia, and people on this podcast would have heard her or know her as well. She's quite bubbly. She's quite outgoing. And so part of what she likes visually is a bit of texture and brightness and noise. And she's got this drink bottle that's got sparkles all over it. That's her kind of thing. And one of the things she's done is when she's traveled over the past probably 10 or 15 years, she'll just get like one little memento from some town that she's been at. Like, she's got this little mini Eiffel Tower from when we went to Paris once, and a little something or other from somewhere else. And she's got them all lined up sort of at the back of her desk. And it's the kind of thing where I think sometimes she'll be sitting there, just working through whatever happens in a normal everyday office work, answering emails and stuff. And being able to visually see, hey, I have had some good travel experiences, just kind of gives her that kind of feeling of joy, right?
Absolutely.
For me, just having so much sort of detail in my space would probably not, I wouldn't love it. Well, I don't. That's why I don't have a lot of that stuff, right? So
Yeah,
it's
and that's totally fine. Like you both have what works for you. And I know that for some people, and so your example there of Alicia's sort of lineup, I think is beautiful. And that's something that we classify as a collection, right? It's
mm,
something that she has specifically sought out each piece and curated that collection so that and she loves it, you know, she tends to it. She will notice if something's amiss, she'll tidy it up. She doesn't let things like sit on top of it. It is curated, it's a collection. Some people who do struggle with clutter are more likely to buy something because it's there and then struggle to get rid of it, even though it's just like sitting in a bag somewhere 3 years
mm,
later. And they think, I can't get rid of that because I got it on that trip. But it's sitting in a bag. And there's something similar that maybe would be part of the same collection if it were a collection in another bag, in another room, forgotten. Probably don't even remember specifically buying it, but we know it was from that trip. That's not a collection, that's clutter. And at its extreme, that's a hoard. It's keeping things just because we keep them, not because we've chosen to. So Alicia's is a collection. You might not be a collector, or you're not a collector of those items. Um, and if Alicia was struggling in other aspects of life, and we all do at some point, but you might notice her collection's getting a bit askew, or we've now got paperwork or something piled up on top of it.
mm.
And that's a pretty good hint to her that maybe she needs to take a minute to do some decluttering.
Yeah,
Desk
I
or
love it.
mind, either one.
And again, it comes back to that kind of reflection of our external environment. That not body mind. What would you call it? Space mind connection or environment mind
Yeah, I don't know. I
connection. I love
probably should have a word for that, but it's definitely how our minds and our environment reflect each other for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I've got to also ask you again. It's just asking you like personal questions here, Lauren. I'm getting the
Please
most
go
out of
for
this
it.
for myself that I can while everyone else is listening. But I'm thinking of in our house, in our family, we're not like super neat. We're a normal family, live in a normal kind of busy life. Our house just looks lived in, but not
Hmm.
overly cluttered. I wouldn't say that,
Sure.
except for my teenage son's bedroom. So he is, oh my goodness, the messiest person I have ever met, and it's like he's proud of it. He it's some kind of teenage rebellion, I think. But his room, his floor is covered in clothes.
Hmm.
All of his stuff is all over the place. His
Hmm.
wardrobe that's meant to have the clothes hanging in it is filled with all sorts of other stuff, just sports equipment and all sorts of things. And while it's in his room, like we've kind of come to the basic understanding as parents of a teenager, what happens in your room, you can just, or shut the
Yeah,
door if
don't
it
want to know.
rises too much.
Yeah.
That's right. But he's got a space in our shared lounge room that is a desk
Mhm.
that also ends up with stuff all over the floor and all these
Mhm.
clothes everywhere and sports equipment and just everything else, old food wrappers and everything. And it's really hard to get him to clean it up. Now, this could be a question that puts you right at the top of my favorite podcast interviewees, Lauren. But is there a way to get my teenage son to clean up after himself?
Oh God, I wish I could give you the answer you're looking for there, James.
You've
There
got
are
a magic
so
pill for that one. You'll make a
oh, I would
million.
love that. And I would love to be able to tell you exactly what to do there because I have a 13-year-old daughter who has autism and ADHD, and I'm her mum. And if there's anything parents know, it's that when mum says it,
Mm,
it's not going to happen. Right? Like mum's opinion means all
mm-hmm.
to a teenager.
And
But
sometimes the opposite, like I said,
mm,
if we hassle our kids about something, especially teenagers, sometimes that's almost like saying that you get a reaction by doing the opposite, or you get
mhm,
significance or something by
mhm.
not doing what mum and dad say.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, you touched on a few things there that are at play. And so, obviously, the first one was a bit of teenage rebellion. I don't think it's a conscious teenage rebellion. I think it's actually really similar to if you go back in your mind to when he was toilet training. When kids are toilet training, they often, will hold it in or they'll purposely go like just after you've given them the opportunity to use the toilet. And around the same age, they also test the boundaries with eating. You know, some kids like refuse to eat or eat things that they shouldn't or whatever. It's because at that age, they've realized that they have so little control over anything. They're going to control what they can. And what they can control is what goes in and what comes out, or at least when, right? Now that he's older, and he would have gone through several iterations of this in different ways and testing his boundaries. At the moment, he's a teenager. He has a lot going on in his mind, more than he is aware of, and definitely more than he's capable of processing. And his room is reflecting that. You know, in the same way that anyone who struggles with clutter, their space is reflecting what's going on in their mind. So part of what needs to happen here is that understanding. And it sounds like you're already doing a pretty good job of just going, not my problem. I'm here if you need me. But the part you were talking about that's shared space, that comes down to, okay, you are now impacting the rest of us. There's a respect issue there. And you understanding that okay, he might be doing it a little bit on purpose, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt that that rebellion is subconscious, that he's got a lot going on and isn't really aware of the mess he's making when he's making it. And he's far too busy and important to spend any time cleaning up just because dad said so. Right? But that space is impacting you. It's impacting the rest of the family. And that's not okay. That's not fair. So asking him to do it, probably not going to do a lot. Nagging just, perpetuates. And again, I have tried so hard not to nag, but sometimes you just get in that zone and you really want to say things like, I'm coming in here with the big black plastic bag and throwing it all out. I promise you that is not the solution either. That will only make things worse. But I know that feeling very, very well. What I would suggest to you, James, is what you're already doing with his bedroom, as in leave it unless we think that there's something that's actually dangerous. If you've got something rotting in there or we notice weird noises and think there's a family of possums that have moved in, leave it. That is your space. You can give him hints, you can offer support, but mostly let him figure it out for now. But that space that is the family room, if he's not going to maintain it, it's not fair. So what I would suggest is get a bucket or a tub of some description, and maybe once a week or every day, if it's bothering you that much, James, scoop it all into the tub. Scoop it in, pop a lid on it, pop it back in his room. This does not belong out here. So again, this is what this space is supposed to look like, and reset it for him. Don't process all the stuff, just get it off, reset it. It's a step you shouldn't have to be responsible for, but you have a choice. Are you going to leave it like that and let it bother you and let it sort of infect your mood so that your space is now impacting your brain? Or are you going to take a little bit of action and put it back in his court?
It sounds awesome. I love it, Lauren. This is like a parenting coach session as well as decluttering coach.
I will reiterate, my daughter has the same problem. I am frequently finding little collections around the house that she's just got up and walked away. But I do what I've just told you. I'm like, I can ask her. If she happens to be in the room, I can say, can you tidy this up? And she will. But for the most part, if I go to her and say, can you come back and tidy this up? I'm then interrupting whatever she's doing, and that's going to throw that off, and that's going to cause problems with her and between us. So 9 times out of 10, I will decide that this is a bigger problem for me than it is for her. So I will deal with it. I will pick up those few things that she has left behind, gather them together, and just take them to her room. What she does with it in there is up to her.
I'll definitely give that a shot with our son and see how we go. I guess I do want to come.
Do let me know.
And, lots of our listeners, they're going to be living in families, and they're going to have people, whether it's kids or partners or parents or whatever that they might be living with. So I see that is definitely a part of the decluttering challenge, is the kind of the way that it's not just your own wishes or your own kind of desire for what a space might look like, but if you're sharing it with others, that's something you've got to consider, right? But I guess I also want to just return to the business side of things and how that might be reflected in for massage therapists specifically, I guess, in a clinical environment. How would you say like, do you have a rhythm and flow like that? You just mentioned sort of a weekly check over. Do you have some kind of system for decluttering, or is decluttering like a one-off thing and then you just try and maintain, or like, what's the process actually look like?
So for me, I do not believe in a once and done. It just doesn't work. That's like saying, I've eaten a salad today, so tomorrow I'll be skinny and I never have to do it again, right? It's just like a diet, it's like an exercise regime, and it's like the laundry, You're never done with laundry, you're never done with a diet, you're never done with exercise. It's as long as you're living, you're going to have clutter. Like it's just at
Mm,
what level you can manage it and how well you're managing it in the moment. Right. So in an office space, um, you're going to have buildups of things sometimes. If you've been distracted by something or you've got a client that took a little bit longer, you had an important phone call to get to, life gets in the way, business gets in the way, and the process that you might have already had set up for, say, invoicing or returning phone calls or whatever task you're currently working on, if you're interrupted, there's now a backlog. And that backlog becomes some kind of clutter, right? It either becomes physical clutter on
mm,
your desk, or if nothing else, it becomes a clutter on your time. Yeah. So I don't believe that there is a one size fits all, like you said, with how you set up your office space. You need to figure out what works for you. And what works for you today might not be what works for you tomorrow. It might not be what works for your business partner, but you have to figure out what's working now. Okay. So taking the time to reflect what's going on. And I spoke in your intensive about my declutter framework. So I'll just quickly run through that for anyone who didn't see it. Declutter is DCLTR: dream, curate, learn, try, reset. So dream is where we visualize what we want this to look like. So it might be your physical space, like we discussed with your desk, but it could also be how my time flows throughout the day. Like, what does a
mm,
working day look like to me? What does my full day, so including what do I do before work and after work? How does that impact the family? The whole thing. Whatever you're looking at, whatever is feeling cluttered, what is the dream? What's the perfect, this is awesome level? What does that look like to you? So dream, curate. Curate is, like I said, pick up one thing at a time. It's a little bit harder when it's abstract, but you can one thing at a time. Here are the things that I do in a day. Is that part of that dream? Or is that something that I can outsource or just cut out entirely? And we can do this with a to-do list, for example, as well. But it's going to be different for everyone. Learn. Learn and try kind of go hand in hand, but learn is questioning and going, oh, if that's my answer, I wonder what that actually means for these other things. And if so, okay, I use the example of my glasses case. I learn I need to have my glasses case on my desk, or I'm going to forget to wear my glasses or forget to put them away. Okay, so I tried, T for try. If my glasses case, if I have an extra pair of reading glasses or working glasses that always live on my desk, will that help me? Yes, it did. Okay, that was a win. So I always keep that on my desk and I have another pair of glasses that come with me because I learned something about myself and I tried something. And then reset. Reset is a really important part that we often overlook. And that's where we come back to no, it's not once and done because we reset. Sometimes we reset in the same day or in the same activity, like you saying when you're cooking, you sort of clean up as you go. You're resetting at each step. You're like, I've used the knife and now I will clean it and put it away. Whereas Alicia will do a whole project and then the second project is resetting, cleaning and putting away. But we can also reset on a grander scale. We can say, things are not working for me right now. A few things have fallen apart and I know what I should have been doing and I know how that happened, but I can't get myself back. What's going on? Hard reset. What were you doing when things were going well? you know? So for me, and I've been going through this myself recently, I'm like, I'm really tripping over myself at the moment, you know, all sorts of things. Every part of, not every part, but lots of parts of my life I can see crumbling a little bit. And I'm like, what was I doing when things were going well? And pick one thing. What can I do now that's going to help with that? So earlier this morning, I was like, I need a hard reset. I don't have time to go for a hike, which I love doing. It's too damn hot anyway. Um, you know, I went through all of my tools. What has worked? I don't know. I went with a guided meditation. I found a meditation I used to do regularly and I dropped that habit unintentionally. I went, that's what I'm going to do today. So that was my hard reset today. So I'm resetting my mind. And that will help me in my next step. Okay, now I review. I've reset and review back to my dream. What is my dream? Is that still my dream? The last time I looked at my life, is that still what I want? The last time you looked at your desk, is that still what you want, or do you want it to look a bit different now? Last time you looked at your calendar, last time you looked at your to-do list. Question it again, reset that dream to make sure you're not just making decisions by default anymore.
Yeah, I love this. There's a whole lot of
Cool.
stuff here that's just firing off all sorts of different
There's
thoughts in my
so
head.
much.
It's so much, but I love that. I love a framework anyway, and having that kind of understanding that it is like a loop. And I guess some people will do that loop quite quickly, and some might take a bit more time with each iteration of it.
Yeah.
But even just internally, like if we're thinking about decluttering the mind, it reminds me a little bit of CBT therapy, or is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which kind of, I'm not like highly trained in that or anything, but it's something that, if I understand it right, it's like you're looking at your past behaviors and saying, well, when I was doing well emotionally or mentally, I had these things happening, like actual behaviors. And so if I'm suddenly not feeling great, I can actually return to some of those behaviors, do the physical behavior, and it can trigger then the good state in my mind. Like I think I'm giving a very basic sort of rundown of CBT there, but it's almost like the same thing with your space. That's what you're saying, or your internal clutter. If I was feeling really good and decluttered and in flow at that point, what were the habits or internal behaviors or external things that might have been creating that or reflecting that? And if I find myself wanting to get back to that internal state, maybe I can just do some of those behaviors as well that will help me to kind of trigger back into that place, which is pretty cool. It's a whole lot deeper than I would imagine, Lauren, if someone just said, I help people declutter and organize their house or something. Like it's a whole lot deeper, which is really cool.
Yeah. And that's why I love it so much. And that's why you cannot shut me up about it, because yes, it's really nice to see before and afters where we're like, here's when my house was a mess and now it's perfect and, you know, ready for a Home Beautiful magazine photo shoot. That's not life. Life is messy. Life is cluttered. But we just don't know enough about our brains and how they work to have a one size fits all solution to things. But if we can be more curious, if we can question our choices, even especially the tiny little ones, we can learn more about how we work, you know. And you've already identified, just in the same household, 2, 3 people can work completely differently and have completely different needs. But understanding your own and then making an effort to understand the people around you, that's such a game changer.
Yeah, how fabulous. I love it. Good on you, Lauren. Thank you so much for being a guest here. I guess I want to also just ask, if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, I'd like to know a bit more about what you actually do, Lauren, because I know you work with people in person as well as online for different things that they need.
Yes.
What's the best place for them to get in touch with you?
So the best place is probably have a look at my website or have a stalk on my social media. So I know that you have the links, James, that I'm sure you'll share.
We'll pop the links in.
Yeah. But as long as you spell my name correctly, Google will find me. So my surname is Winzar, Winzar. If you misspell that, you'll probably find a tattoo artist on the Gold Coast. She's brilliant too, but we're not the same person.
Love it. Your alter ego.
That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been really great to hear some of that wisdom from you. And yeah, I hope you can continue to declutter. And I know I've got some pretty cool tips I'm going to try out we'll see what our son does when he gets home from work and finds all his desk. It's been pushed back into his room. We'll see.
I will laugh so much if you tell me he doesn't notice. And I look forward to hearing how that goes.
Thanks, Lauren. We'll see you later.
Thanks, James. Cheers.